Hi, I'm Christopherkerry, and this is the third tutorial in a series of tutorials covering the techniques I use for coloring light flesh tones. In this tutorial, I'll be laying in darker, stronger colors and using a variety of blending techniques to bring the drawing nearer to completion. I'll begin by laying a darker value in her hair with a V15. At this stage of the drawing, it's important to keep the principal areas in balance relative to their degrees of finish. And since I'm going to be laying darker value and stronger color accents in her face, I need to darken her hair first to ensure her face and hair work well together. When coloring hair, my objective is to make it appear soft and lightweight. I use flicking strokes to create texture, but I'm never working to create individual strands. Instead, I treat the hair as individual but interlocking masses. Each mass has its own dark and mid-value areas, as well as highlights, but the individual areas must also work together as a whole. In real life, even after hair has been brushed or combed and is falling naturally, it has a tendency to group together in individual waves. These masses form because the scalp is not level. The roots of the hair are slanted at different angles as they grow outward from the crown, and the hairs are attracted to each other by static electricity. Hairs that are growing in relatively similar directions arrange themselves in groups. Believe it or not, treating hair as a group of related masses as opposed to individual single strands is a much more realistic approach. When we look in the mirror, we don't see a million distinct hairs sprouting from our heads. Instead, we see locks, tresses, and waves. We know these waves are composed of individual hairs, but that's not what we see. Realism in drawing is based on how things appear, not how things actually are. With her hair darkened, I can now accurately assess the darker colors I'm going to use in her face. I'll lay in a YG91, which is a very dull but light green. I'll use this color in the hollows of her eye sockets and to strengthen the shadow under her chin. I actually consider this color to be a warm green, but in context with the other colors I've used in her face, it creates beautiful areas of light, cool shadow. To contrast the YG09, I'm going to place some desaturated red around her eyes. I'm using an E09 burnt sienna, which is a very warm, dull red. This creates a complementary color contrast with the green I used around her eyes and in her irises. I'll also use this color to darken her nostrils and to accent the corners of her mouth. Because the E09 is a dull desaturated red, it works well to complement the YG91 and as a contrast impurity to the RV21 I'm using to color the blush in her cheeks. If I were using a traditional value coloring method, the RV21 would appear to be a soft light pink, but as you can see, when used against a warm cool foundation, it is instead a very bright strong color. It's natural in a situation like this to think the color is too strong and harsh, and if I were going to try to blend it out with a lighter red, it very well might be. With this in mind, I'll soften it out with a layer of E0000. This color is so light in value that its color strength is diminished, despite the 0 at the beginning of the name. This makes it perfect for softening the color in the cheeks and nose without dramatically altering the strength of the RV21. My objective at this stage in the drawing process is to enhance the visual impact of her face. The method of laying in a dark color and then softening it with a lighter one allows for the application of multiple layers of color in any given area. All of the light value Copic colors are more or less transparent. This quality makes them extremely useful for this type of blending. Because the colors are transparent, you can see into and through the top layers of color to the base colors below, which makes for beautiful color combinations that can only be achieved with the layering method of blending. Think of it this way. If you color a mid-value yellow Copic over a mid-value blue, the color appears green, but the two colors don't actually mix together to make green. Instead, you're seeing the blue through the yellow, which creates an optical mixture rather than a physical one. This type of blending creates the impression of the color and not an actual mixture. Consequently, the colors created this way are much more vibrant. This layering technique is very similar to using glazes in oil painting and can be achieved with Copic markers in multiple ways. You can even glaze with darker, less transparent Copic colors by using a tip-to-tip blending technique. To use this blending method, you begin with a strong, pure, darker value color and a clean, colorless blender. By rubbing the tips of the two markers together, some of the darker color is transferred to the tip of the blender. In effect, you are mixing the darker color with a very small amount of blending fluid, which lightens it just a touch, but has the greater effect of making it much more transparent. With this technique, it's possible to add areas of pure strong color to your drawings, which are nearly transparent and super easy to blend. Because the color is transparent, the ambient light that falls on the drawing will actually pass through the top layers of the color and bounce back from the base layers below, which makes flesh tones created with this method seem to radiate color and light from within. This effect is what gives old master paintings their beauty, and when created with Copic markers, it's no less impressive.